$190 million gone. The only person with the password dead on his honeymoon. But here's the problem. In the world of crypto, a dead body doesn't always mean a dead man. Is Gerald Cotten really gone? Or was this the cleanest exit scam history has ever seen? Today, we unlock the room. To understand the collapse, let's step back to the illusion. Before the scandal, QuadrigaCX was the crown jewel of Canadian crypto. If you were in Canada in 2016 or 2017 and you wanted Bitcoin, you didn't go to a shady offshore site. You went to Quadriga. It was trusted. It was local. And at the center of it was Gerald Cotten. He cultivated the image of the nice guy. While other crypto founders were anonymous shadows, Gerald was visible. He sponsored meetups. He smiled in interviews. In a market defined by risk, he sold safety. But that safety was a mirage. Behind the polished website, the reality was dangerously thin. QuadrigaCX wasn't a bank. It wasn't even a tech company in the traditional sense. It was essentially one man working from a laptop, often sitting on his patio. There was no accounting department, no board of directors overseeing the funds. The entire operation, hundreds of millions of dollars of other people's money, rested on a single point of failure: Gerald Cotten. While customers waited weeks for their money, blaming the banks, a darker reality was taking shape. In crypto, there's a rule: not your keys, not your coins. A secure exchange needs multiple keys to open the vault. Quadriga, it had one key, held by one man, Gerald Cotten. If he died, $190 million would be locked in a digital coffin forever. According to court filings and forensic reports released later, the cracks appeared long before the India trip. In 2017, a software error occurred on the platform. It was a technical glitch, but the cost was catastrophic. A significant amount of Ethereum, valued at roughly $14 million at the time, was accidentally sent into a state where it could no longer be accessed, permanently frozen. For a normal company, this is a crisis. For Quadriga, it was a turning point. Gerald didn't declare bankruptcy. He didn't tell his customers. He decided to gamble his way out. Gerald wasn't just a CEO. He was a gambling addict. And he wasn't betting with his own money. He was betting with yours. Under fake names like Skepter, he gambled client funds on other exchanges. And like any desperate gambler, he lost. Not a few thousands. He lost nearly $200 million. By late 2018, the walls were closing in. Bitcoin had crashed. Liquidity was drying up. In the middle of this firestorm, Gerald and his wife, Jennifer Robertson, made a decision. They booked a trip to India. The official reason was a honeymoon and a charitable mission to open an orphanage. But 12 days before the flight, Gerald signed a new last will and testament. It was detailed. It was precise. He allocated assets, real estate, and even a $100,000 trust fund for their two chihuahuas, Nitro and Gully. He planned for the dogs. But remarkably, he left no instructions for the private keys. This brings us to a critical question. What did Jennifer Robertson know? Publicly available filings show she was not involved in the technical operations of the exchange. She later stated she had no knowledge of the missing keys or the fraud. However, The optics fueled suspicion. She was the sole beneficiary of the will signed days before the trip. While investigators never charged her with a crime, and court records show she agreed to return certain assets to support the recovery process. For many observers, the timeline remains uncomfortable. They arrived in Jaipur in December. Within 24 hours, the timeline accelerates into chaos. Gerald fell ill. He was admitted to Fortis Escorts Hospital complaining of severe stomach pain. The diagnosis was complications from Crohn's disease, a chronic condition typically manageable in modern medicine. Yet, his decline was rapid. According to hospital records, he suffered a series of cardiac arrests. Despite resuscitation efforts, on the evening of December 9th, Gerald Cotten was pronounced dead. This is where the narrative becomes clouded by conflicting reports. There was no autopsy performed in India. The cause of death was listed simply as cardiac arrest, but it was the handling of the body that raised alarms. According to investigative reporting, the body was not transported by a hospital ambulance. It was reportedly moved by staff from the Oberoi Rajvilas, the luxury hotel where the couple was staying. The journey continued to a local embalmer. In interviews given later, the embalmer, Dr. Seema, claimed she initially refused to accept the body, finding the circumstances unusual. Eventually, the body was moved to a local medical college. Some witnesses described the location in unsettling terms, mentioning a sign above the door made of human bones. But details like this are hard to verify. And in stories like this, rumor often grows faster than facts. In this dimly lit environment, the body of the multimillionaire was processed, placed in a sealed casket, and sent back to Canada. Back in Canada, silence. For a full month, QuadrigaCX did not announce the death. The platform stayed online. Automated systems continued to accept deposits. Millions of dollars flowed into an exchange that was already a ghost ship. It wasn't until mid-January that the announcement was made. Gerald was dead, and the keys were gone. When the news broke, the reaction wasn't just grief. It was a wave of organized suspicion. A massive community of victims gathered on Telegram and Reddit. They weren't just angry. They were digitally literate. They knew that crypto transactions are recorded on a public ledger. They started tracking Quadriga's known wallet addresses. They looked for the massive reserves of Bitcoin that Gerald was supposed to have. And what they found was worse: nothing. The wallets were dormant, or empty. The community realized the truth before the police did. The money wasn't lost, it simply wasn't there. The courts appointed Ernst & Young to take over. This wasn't a simple audit. It was a digital excavation. Investigators imaged Gerald's laptop. They cracked encrypted files. They traced transaction hashes across multiple blockchains. They followed the funds moving from Quadriga to overseas exchanges named in reports, including Poloniex and Kraken. The report they finally released was devastating. It confirmed that the cold wallets had been empty for months. The reserves existed only on the screen. The liquidity was an illusion. As the investigation deepened, another ghost emerged from the past: Gerald's co-founder, Michael Patryn. Patryn had left the company's daily operations years earlier, but his shadow remained. Internet sleuths linked Patryn to a man named Omar Danani, a convicted felon in the United States involved with the cybercrime ring Shadow Crew. It revealed that the foundation of Quadriga was built by a man with a history of financial fraud, Gerald knew exactly who his partner was. It is easy to get lost in the numbers, $190 million, but the human cost was specific. It was retirement savings. It was down payments on homes. For thousands of Canadians, the collapse wasn't just a news story. It was financial ruin. They were left with nothing but a claim form in a bankruptcy proceeding that would drag on for years. The victims didn't just want their money. They wanted the body. Lawyers made an unprecedented request: dig him up, exhume the grave, test the DNA. They needed to know if the man in that casket was really Gerald Cotten or just a bag of rocks. The authorities said no. The grave remains closed for now. QuadrigaCX stands as a monument to the fragility of trust. We trust screens. We trust balances displayed on a website. But without a private key, that money is just pixels. In crypto, trust is not a feeling. It is a system. Gerald Cotten took a secret to his grave. Whether he died a tragic death in a hospital room in Jaipur, or whether he pulled off the ultimate disappearance, the result for the victims is the same. The wallet is empty, the key is lost, and the screen has gone black.